I'm Samira Saramo. I'm an Academy of Finland postdoctoral researcher at the John Morton Center for North American Studies at the University of Turku. I'm one of those scholars who's interested in just about everything and anything and seem to go in all kinds of directions. But mostly I look at the history and the life writing of Finnish immigrants in Canada and the United States. I'm happy to be a part of this workshop. It's about earth, place, and rootedness in migrants' lives and deaths. And I'm really excited to be putting it together with the wonderful London-based poet Nancy Mattsson and University of Helsinki postdoctoral researcher Ulla Savolainen. Nancy is a Canadian with Finnish roots, but she's also been living in England for a long time, and so she has these multiple migrant identities and interests. And Ulla has been studying migrants' narratives, Ingrians and Karelians who have been displaced from their homelands. And so together we thought it would be really interesting to bring together our backgrounds in history, poetry, cultural memory, and folklore to look at the ways that migration changes people's ideas about the very soil that's under their feet and how they understand place and time throughout their lives and even at times of death. This year's Aboagora theme of Earth is a perfect fit for Nancy Mattsson, Ulla Savolainen, and I, because we all have that earthiness and rootedness and earth and soil so strongly in our work. And something that we've been playing with as we prepare for this workshop is the idea of the amazing Finnish word maa. I think it says a lot more maybe than the English word earth in a way, because when we think about maa, we could translate it in so many different ways into English. We could be referring to the ground, to the soil, to the dirt, but we also mean by it a country, the countryside, nations, but also the entire earth. So it's just, we've been thinking about how maa, earth, really is everything for us. When people leave their home communities to go somewhere new, to start a new life, as we say, be that by relative choice to decide that there are better economic opportunities, or be it because of real danger and forced migration, as we'll see with the case of the Ingrians and Karelians that Ulla has been studying. People like to bring a part of the place where they've left with them. Nancy has thought about this as talisman, a kind of symbol, a physical part of where you've come from, and to help you build that new place and person that you are through migration. But very often it's also something kind of practical, yet so imbued with emotional significance. For example, these migratory objects like bringing Karelian potatoes with you so you can plant them again in the new soil, or Finnish flowers that you'll plant in your garden in Canada, for example. So that's something really important, and an important way for migrants to build bridges between their home communities and their new places. And through that process, they're literally planting a part of themselves into the new soil and earth that they're now present upon. So for me as a social historian and a scholar of life writing, I'm very interested in the whole idea of the life cycle, from our birth through our childhood as we age into old age, and most recently in the past few years I've been looking at death, what it means for immigrants and immigrant communities when in Canada and the United States in particular, when their loved ones die, or when they encounter a death either in that immigrant community or back home in Finland. And so of course earth is a part of this life cycle too, or the ground or the soil, because we very much symbolically and sort of figuratively think about earth as being not only for humans but all animals and plants as our starting point where we come from and then ultimately return to in death. And of course in practice, though our burial practices are changing very much and there's many different ways now, really it comes back to how do we return these people that we've loved and who have been important parts of our community back into the ground so they can feed that cycle again. In our workshop, we're going to be exploring the ways that landscape and the places that we live has a lot of power in our lives. I would argue that not only do we impact the landscape and the places that we live, but that those very places impact us and shape the ways that we experience all of the many things in our lives. And something that we're going to get into, and I think that in the workshop this might even get into some personal levels, we'll see, but is the kind of emotional power. So how we say that the landscape or a place moves us, and how there are so many feelings that are connected to place and particular landscapes and particular natural places, and these interesting questions and tensions of, do we impose those feelings on it, or does that place actually have some kind of agency that shapes our interaction with it in ways that are beyond our own kind of grasp even. And so I think that that's going to be interesting to think about the power of place and emotion and this being moved, both in the context of migration and emotionally.